just let's decide who's going to go first and where we're going to start. I could say that I met Sam at Greenham Common because that's kind of like relevant, isn't it? And then we met in Winchester. That should go.
Yeah.
So I'll start. So I met Sam at Greenham Common. She had a dog and she was trying to find somewhere for the dog to live while she went off grape picking. And she did find somewhere and I said I'd help her if she couldn't. But anyway, next thing was, as far as I remember, I think it would be 91 still, and I met Sam and Steph in the middle of Winchester. Is that right?
Yeah, by the Bart Cross.
Yeah. And you'd just come back from the grape picking, hadn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And you were playing. I remember you were playing, and I didn't recognise Sam, but she suddenly recognised me and said, I met you at Greenham Common.
Yeah, I remember because we were passing by there, coming from Avebury or something, and we'd been given a load of food by the cafe there before we'd drop it off at Greenham. I think we were on our way back to London. And we arrived there and there was an action going on, and there was like women were going through the fence and out into the...
Oh right, at Greenham.
Yeah, yeah. And I can't remember what it was now. There was some significant date for some reason. And then we went away, came back, bumped into Winchester. There was that American guy, Charlie, wasn't there?
Oh yeah.
And there was a whole set of coincidences.
Yeah, quite weird.
We ended up round at Martin and Phillida's place. If you remember them up the hill.
Yeah, I think I do.
Anyway, that's what I remember. There's a lot of coincidences.
Yes,
that
was. Yeah.
like one piled on top of another,
Because the synchronicity of meeting up in Winchester at that time was amazing, because I hardly ever went into Winchester, and I just met Sam that once briefly, and I didn't recognise her, but suddenly we were all talking. And at what stage did you move into that house next door to me that was an empty house?
Sometime around, and we were just looking for somewhere to live. You know, we just got back to the country, and we just arrived in Portsmouth, and we just thought, where should we head? It's Winchester, why not? You know, got on the bus, and it was like, I remember coming round a bend and seeing St Catherine's Hill for the first time, and it was a really big moment for me, just seeing that hill. You know, it was like, you know, a gong was sort of sounded. You know, the moment I first saw that hill, and I didn't know all the stuff was gonna happen.
You didn't even know that, but it was an intuitive resonance.
Yeah, but it's just got a presence about it, and as soon as you see it, it's like the way Glastonbury Tour has or something. It's just one of those places that sort of, it's just got such a strong sort of thing about it. You know? And, drawn to the place, and then we ended up going up there pretty soon. We met a guy in town, Tez. Do you remember Tez?
Oh yes.
Right, sort of Mancunian ex-squaddy.
Oh yes.
But he was he was a real character. Like, we used to hang out with him a lot.
Was he also a musician?
No, he wasn't a musician, but he sort of tried to play a bit of stuff, but it wasn't really that wasn't his main thing. But we all wandered up the hill together and sort of walked the maze and stuff, and we found the dongas for the first time.
Oh right.
And I just remember.
Did you know what they were? That they were called the dongas?
I just remember being really kind of, you know, really struck by them, really amazed by.
Yeah.
Because I'd seen things like them before on the chalk, probably around Avebury,
like huge waves, like mini tsunamis on the landscape.
But there were so many of them there, and so many of them all coming
and
together.
So intricate and strange.
Yeah, it's just not a place like you see every day, you know. And that was it, you know. After that, it was like.
Do you remember you moved into that house next to me that was empty, and the owners never found out for ages and ages, and you stayed there most of the winter, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the spring was coming, and I'd found out that there was this guy, Merrick Denton Thompson, who was willing to take us on a walk and show us everything to do with Twyford Down. 'Cause I was just learning that Twyford Down was a really amazing issue that we had to find out more deeply what was going on. And I said to you guys, this guy Merrick he's a landscape architect for Hampshire County Council. He knows everything about the situation. And he took us on a walk. He met us in his lunch hour. Do you remember?
Yeah, yeah. And he showed us around the hill, and I remember like going back up to Dongers again, like, and this time he was telling us what he knew about it, and it just made a connection. I can't remember exactly what he said now, but there's something really special about that place, and there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of things have gone on. The place is very worn in. Obviously, the tracks are worn so deep, and that there's a history piled on top of history there, you know, and a very significant place in the, you know, the sort of life of England and Britain in general, and it goes right back to sort of way back. But he just the stuff he was saying, it just kind of made me aware of all that whole.
And he described how the Dongers had been trackways that converged onto where there was like a causeway that went across the marshes to the cathedral and to the city, because the cathedral was kind of floating on water.
Yeah, it's in a bog, isn't it?
In a great bog. And so he showed us why the Dongers were there, because people were coming from all over the downs with their sheep. And they were like drovers' tracks, really, weren't they? And there were so many thousands of sheep and so many thousands of people over the years, over hundreds of years maybe. Because Winchester was founded on wool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the sheep were very important.
Like 30 foot deep.
Yeah. And so that it just kind of converged over Winchester, and he said that this was really significant, and it was a story in the landscape, because he was a landscape architect, and he said you could tell a lot about our past and who we are now.
You could tell he'd been affected by the place, and he had to pass on what he knew. But then after that tour, like, he took us to see this guy. I can't remember. I think he was called Bob or something. There was like, just round the back of Twyford Down, there was this place called the Lime Centre, and he took us to this. They specialise in sort of old lime, restoring old lime buildings and stuff like that. And
Like doing whitewashing
yeah,
stuff?
and him and this guy had concocted a plan that they were going to build a roundhouse on Twyford Down.
Yes, I remember.
In the post holes of
Yes.
where
Using
the archaeology
old-
had been done.
Yes.
Building roundhouses in the post holes and doing it and using that old law that says if you do it between sunrise and sunset, you claim the land. sort of thing. So they were going to use that as a kind of publicity stunt, sort of legal, trying to
It's a
exploit
great
legal
idea.
loopholes.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, so and they said the only trouble is, we need someone to live in it. And we said no problem, we'll do that. It was like right up our street. Quite happy to live in a Iron Age roundhouse in Twyford Down.
And participate in building it and getting it there, because you had to do it so fast.
And that plan was like really sort of took that seriously and really wanted to do it. And then the guy ended up backing out of it because they just received some award from Prince Charles or something. And didn't want to they suddenly didn't want to do anything controversial, But so that all fell through, and it has always stayed a plan. Oh, one day it would be great if we could do this. But those guys had the know-how and the ability to sort of get a crew together to do it and know how to do a really good job on it, which we just didn't at that time. But yes, that never happened, which was a shame. I always thought that wasn't really that didn't happen.
Yeah, and it did seem as though you got the idea to go and live there, just set up something, and you were just going to be there with the land 24/7.
Yeah, because there was a camp on the Friends of the Earth had a camp on the Water Meadows, and we were going visiting there sort of quite regularly. So most days we were going down there. But
that was after you'd already established your place.
No, it was before.
Was
it was
it?
before. They were down there.
Right.
They went there for when the first bulldozers turned up on the Water Meadows to start the first actual damage to the land.
Yeah.
and they had a camp there, but they kind of did it their way, and we were there and we were trying to say, let's have a fire here, you know, because wouldn't
Didn't
allow a
want to
fire.
put a fire because they thought they'd damage.
Yeah, they said, oh no,
things.
that will damage the turf and that's giving out the wrong message and everything. But we were like, yeah, but you know, this turf,
It's
if
going
they
to
get
be-
away, it's going to all get
It's going
trashed
to be
anyway.
deeply damaged.
And they said, no, that's giving out the wrong sort of,
Right.
you know. And we were like, yeah, but if you don't, people are just cold and wet and miserable, and this thing isn't going to grow. It's just going to, you know.
True, if you don't have a fire, you don't have a heart.
Yeah. So, and then like one day the bulldozers came and took out a rectangle of turf, just for some, I don't know, it was to do with scientific reasons or something. But we said, all right then, look, there's a rectangle of bare earth there, and I'm not going to damage any turf if we have a fire in there. Oh no, we can't do that. And we're just like starting to get really annoyed with them by now, you know. And basically, what it seemed like what they wanted to do was just have a symbolic sort of. They set up a chain and they chained themselves to the chain, and it was just a symbolic
they wanted
gesture.
to take a bit of chain home with them and say that.
Yeah.
I remember them doing that, saying, "Look, we've got this memento.
It wasn't about actually trying to
Really do it."
do something to stop it. It was just a sort of symbolic gesture. Like
Yeah, I
we were
remember
here,
it's
we
very
did this.
frustrating.
Like, okay, done that. Let's go and do something else. Then.
Yeah.
And I didn't really agree with that. And, you know, I just remember one night at that house, in that squat we were in, just pacing up and down. And just all this stuff was going through my head. We just got to go and move on to the dongas. And then so we started putting that out to people. And get a camp going on the dongas. So we started telling some of them. We took one guy from Friends of the Earth up there and showed it to them. They hadn't even seen it. Like, you know, they'd been on the water meadows.
So busy down.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of difference in height.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't even realise this was here. This is
goodness
bang
me.
on the route. This is like the most important bit. I mean, yeah, the water meadows, SSSI, and the rest of it.
Yeah.
But so is this, but it's also all these other things as well. It's got all the history. It's got it's
Because
got the
we'd had
dongas, so-
Merrick showing us all that. And
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
And that was just so we really
so we did.
understood.
Yeah, so we took him and showed him, and but you know,
Yeah.
he was just one person, and like it didn't. But the Friends of the Earth had their own agenda with it, it wasn't like they really wanted to do direct action or stop
No,
the work.
they didn't understand the concept maybe at that time.
So yes, and there was like Earth Firsters were starting to kind of
The Earth First
appear
was,
on the scene.
yeah,
So they you know.
yeah.
There was an action one day. I think it was the first day. Was it the first day when it was on the water meadows still? I can't remember whether it was before the Friends of the Earth camp or after. But there was like a bulldozer tearing up the water meadows. So it must have been after the Friends of the Earth camp. And it was the first day of the bulldozer really going in there and tearing it up. So yeah, it must have been just after they'd done their stunt and gone. And
I remember this one guy with red hair from Glastonbury, called himself a Glastonburian. I can't remember his name, but he was the first person I'd ever met from Earth First.
Right.
And he, do you remember him?
Probably, I probably know who that is. But
I should know his name, but I've forgotten it. But he just started to hang around and say, we've got to do, very, very different philosophies, different as you could imagine from Friends of the Earth.
yeah. I mean, there's a bit of, I don't know. But what was I saying about this? Yeah, that's it. The bulldozer was on the water meadows starting to tear the first strip out of the water meadows.
Yeah.
And there was a crowd of people there gathered, protesters and we were all just stood there kind of wondering what to do. There was a few Earth Firsters about who'd been going around sort of talking about direct action, but we were all just stood there not doing anything, wondering what to do, and suddenly this guy stepped out, a guy in a
Holding
suit.
a child.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was
I know who he
Just
was.
Jerry, but I didn't know him at the time. To me, he was just a guy in a suit,
Yeah.
And he walked out to the bulldozer with his young 2-year-old child or whatever in his arms, and just walked right up to it. And I remember it was pushing a mound of earth in front of it, and it just kept going until his feet were buried, and then it stopped, and then everyone just kind of ran through the cordon and jumped onto the bulldozer, and then it kind
Yeah.
of like that was the first sort of stopping the bulldozer sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that was
and that
like,
became an iconic photograph,
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
it? Of
And-
him with the child. With the fact he had the child, it seemed like he was representing future generations. And
yeah, it was and I met him later on, just happened
Yeah.
to go around someone's place and he was there.
was his name Jeremy?
Yeah, I just know him as Jerry. I call him just Jerry. Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
he's had
Yeah.
a bus that said just
Yes,
people
that's
on
right.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
met
and I
him
met
once.
him and he wasn't a guy in a suit at all. Do you know what I mean? He
mm.
lived on a bus and stuff. And I talked to him about it and he was just like, yeah, that was all sort of like he concocted that as a publicity stunt
Oh,
for that,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
it was clever, you know. It was,
Yeah. Yeah, it really made that amazing image, didn't it, of something
Yeah.
that caught people's imagination and inspiration.
But we met a guy there that day, and then there's like some Earth Firsters about and stuff. And then we met this other guy there that day called Matt, and he was like, and we told him like, oh yeah, this is going on here, but we want to set up a camp up on the dongas up there. And he was like, oh yeah, I'll be up for that. And yeah, he turned up. I can't remember. A bit later on, he turned up with him and a few of his friends. And
Come on, Brembo.
me and Sam were camped up